So, Julie, welcome. This is great.
Thanks,
Looking
Rob.
forward to it. I like I like your background, but
Thank you. Yes, so this is I'm kind of sliding around. This is an image we'll talk about. I won't get too deep yet, but we're part of the transformation that we're doing over at Party City includes our stores. So it's reducing our sight lines and we're calling them our next gen store. It's making balloons a center point, much more theatrical. Actually a huge reduction in SKUs. And this is we've got about 30 of them out in the market now, and more every day. But this is a picture from one of those next gen stores. So yeah, we're making them our Zoom backgrounds. It's more
nice.
interesting than the wall behind me. So
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. Unlike my small little home office here. Let's start out with some quick intros, so everybody knows who we are. I'll start. So, like Kyla said, I'm a senior advisor for SOCi. SOCi is the number one marketing platform for multi-location brands. So it's a suite that includes best-in-class solutions for listings, local SEO, social media, reputation management, localized ads. It's pretty much a whole command center. I'm also the host of Clicks to Bricks, a podcast about multi-location marketing, and a contributor for Forbes. And today I'll be hosting the session with Julie Roehm, right? That's the
Mhm.
pronunciation?
Yep, that's my
Yes.
husband's idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
just went along with it 25 years ago. Yeah. Yes. I'm the chief marketing experience officer here at Party City. Um, I got here almost a year ago. It was December of 19 was when I started. So, nothing like 90 days into your job having a global pandemic hit. So it's been an interesting first year of employment here at Party City. But one of the few things that people don't know about Party City that's probably a good level setting is that Party City is part of Party City Holdings Inc. So my role is corporate wide, not just for the retail segment. The retail segment, we have about 739 stores across the US. We sold our Canadian stores to Canadian Tire about a year ago. So we still work with them, but it's owned separately. And we make about 80% of what we sell in our store, and about anywhere from 40 to 60% of what you might buy in the party aisle in other stores was probably made by us as well through our company's AmScan. We're the largest producer of Mylar balloons, which makes sense. So we've got a company up in Minnesota called Anagram, and they make the Mylar balloons. So again, balloons are, we want to be synonymous with balloons. That's sort of if there's just one product we would want to be known for, it would be balloons for sure. But we sell those balloons in grocery stores and things like that as well. So we wholesale, we retail, we manufacture. So we're a bit more of a vertically integrated company than most people realize. And just because they're very familiar, of course, with the brick and mortar stores. So um, just another little bit of an intro of sort of the role and how I got here. I was with a private equity held company previous to this job, and we sold it and flipped it. And we were having our big congratulations dinner, and one of our independent board members happened to be the chairman of Party City. And he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, would you consider doing this?" So that was, the summer of 19, and they were looking for a new CEO. And so of course I wanted to wait, because I always say culture eats strategy for lunch. So I'm pretty confident that, I can figure out any job, but you can't change people and the culture is easily. So that was the most important thing. So I met Brad Weston, who's our CEO, in August when he started, I think about 10 days after he started, and bought into his vision that we were going to really truly vertically integrate the company well in practice as well as on paper, the way that we had been, and that we were going to be moving from this notion of just being the seller, the provider, the producer of party products, and instead the provider of the whole party experience, something we call a party platform. And so I bought and bit immediately on that. I'm a sucker for a transformation. And the experience role that I took, which is what I started with, I was just the CXO, was really designed to try to focus the company on the customer experience and really change everything we do to be more about selling an experience and journey mapping that than it was about trying to sell SKUs. And so that changed everything. Of course, you work with the merchants and with IT. So we've started to make inroads on the web. I won't go into that right this second, but also the stores, as you're starting to see, we're changing adjacencies, we're reducing SKUs and making them more holistic in terms of the whole party experience. We've got plans and efforts underway and some coming in the future that will be really truly end to end. So including potentially, catering and music to the cleanup. And so really that's our goal and our quest. And our mission is to make it easy for people to create joy by making it easy to create these unforgettable memories. So easy and joy are sort of the two words we like to repeat as many times in a sentence as possible, right along with balloons. So that was the notion. And then the pandemic hit, of course, and we can go into that. But about end of April, I was also made CMO, so grouping the two things together, and we've made some pretty positive inroads in a really tough year, where pandemic and party are not terribly synonymous, sadly. But it's I always say never underestimate the human spirit, the sense of creativity that.
Uh-oh.
The party in all of us in a big way coming up really soon.
Well, I do. I want to think about our conversation and, kind of, three different stages. You had the pre-pandemic stage where you took where you joined the company, and then obviously you had to deal with the pandemic. But now we're actually starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel a bit, despite how, kind of dire things are right now. We do have a pretty good sense that we're going to be coming out of this. So before COVID hit, though, I mean, like you said, you were joining it as with a big turnaround challenge. So, and each of these, I think, obviously, we want to look at it through both kind of the experience and the marketing lens. What was the initial challenge when you joined? Like, what was the state of the brand? And what did that first kind of 30, 60, 90 plan look like?
Well, so, when you get started, I started December 9th. And so we were the biggest season, unlike most retailers for us, is Halloween. So, when you say December 9th, oh, that's right before your big season. We do a good business New Year's Eve, no doubt, but Christmas isn't the biggest season for us. It's really Halloween. So it was an interesting time to come in post Halloween when we hadn't done very well. The year of 19 and part of 18 was really challenging. It seems like a lifetime ago, but there were helium issues. And obviously when you're synonymous with balloons, that's an issue. And so there was some sales that were struggling. The Halloween of 19 was not good by our standards, nor by the market standards. And so I was coming in, and Brad had just come in. So we came in, and there was, by the way, it wasn't just Brad as the new CEO and me as the new chief experience officer, or as first chief experience officer, but we had a new chief merchant. We had a new head of HR. I dragged over an IT guy from the last place. He's now our corporate CIO. We have a new CFO. So it sort of goes on and on. It's very transformative. So all of this is sort of happening at the same time as we are trying to then get together and discuss what is our strategy. So we have our purpose, which I've already said, and then the strategy is very much what it is the trying to create the customer experience and to make it easy. And we weren't making it easy. What the traditional way that we had worked, it felt very akin to automotive to me from all of my automotive years, where you've got the UAW and you've got to build vehicles. And if you say, well, we're not going to build vehicles because there's not demand, well, you have to pay the UAW, the workers anyway, whether you produce or not. So they always made the decision to just keep producing because it was more cost effective to produce something and sell it at a deep discount than it was to not produce something and pay people to stay home. And so if you think about it from us, we had all these plants producing party goods. And so they were producing a lot of party goods. And of course, we are the biggest customer of PCHI. So if the demand wasn't there for the rest of the wholesale, we got it all. So that's where, for decades, and we weren't alone, many retailers had that whole stack it high and watch it fly mentality. That doesn't fly anymore with customers. So I think it had just taken some time for us as a company to realize that we really needed to pivot and really needed to take that customer insight and the customer need first and really think of holistically about what she does when she's planning for a party. Like, what is it all the way back into like Johnny's birthday comes the same time every year. So what is it this year? And it's stressful, but helping all the way up in that inspiration period and to make it easy all the way through to the follow-up thank you notes and cleanups, as I say, that was the mission that we'd never considered before. It was really very much, let's just make sure we've got everything that she might need for the party. But that was a very different thing than thinking about grouping it together so that you could buy it in one simple click or all together without having to run around the entire, store, that it was all very easy. And that included not only just the product and just thinking differently about the merchandise and how we merchandised it and how we produced it, but it was also the how we delivered it. So one was the what, two was reducing. I think I've always think of us like, you've been to the Cheesecake Factory and that menu, sometimes more is not more. And so I think in the same way for us, we had more, which wasn't necessarily more. And when you look at the basket, it's like the majority of sales were limited to a much smaller set of SKUs than what we were offering. And so we were just making it harder for her to get what she wanted by kind of cluttering it with things that weren't as relevant. So that was first. Then came and by the way, this is both digital and in store. Then came well, that's great, but now we've got this crazy thing called balloons. And anybody who's tried to get balloons before probably knows that you've got this limiting factor called your vehicle. And if you want a whole bunch of balloons, it's real hard if you're driving around in a Prius to get 20 balloons in your car. In fact, I will tell you, it's not going to happen. So unless they're not inflated, then we can stick a whole bunch in your car. But this was a real, it shouldn't have been an eye opener, but this was a real opportunity because we know a lot of times when she shops, she wants to have the whole party planned and put together. She might get that stuff early, be setting the table, but balloons, kind of like food, it's got a shelf life, and so you can't get the balloons too early or they're on the ground by the time the party starts. So you gotta plan all these things, and that's just not easy for her because she's got to run around and pick all these things up. And so why don't we just deliver the whole, effing thing, right? Let's just get somebody to get what you want. You want the balloons, you want the stuff. We can do 2 separate deliveries for you. We can deliver or we can do it curbside. And that was the strategy. Pandemic hit and we just decided that we were going to lean in instead of, sitting back and just saying, well, there'll be forgiveness because it's pandemic. We were like, no, because she really still has this party. She needs us. And so we set up same day delivery. We set up curbside. It had never been done. Harkening back to my auto days, I happen to know a lot of people in different auto verticals, and rental cars is one of them. So called people over at Hertz and said, I bet you're not renting a lot of cars in this pandemic, and you probably have a lot of people. This was before they, filed for bankruptcy. But
right, they were pretty challenged.
They were like, yeah, great. So they, in 8 days from that first phone call to 8 days later, we were delivering our first party. And it was extraordinarily manual. It was clunky, but it was the right thing to do. And so we started to smooth that over the pandemic months and started to add more automation and technology. And it's still not perfect. I mean, we've got, if there's anybody on here who knows how to do same day delivery perfectly, where your scores are, I would love to hear about that. But it's a challenge, and it seems to be industry wide that it's a challenge to be able to get it perfect all the time. So, but we did that, and we're improving and leaning in, and we just kind of what we did is we just narrowed down our focus to those things that we thought would have the best impact on our customer. And we just pushed all the rest aside. And so that means you make really hard decisions, but the things that were going for us were, one, there was a pandemic, and two, we were in a transformation with an entirely new team. And so there was an expectation of that kind of thing.
So as we shift into the pandemic phase, you took the hat of CMO during that transition.
Mhm.
Talk to me just a little briefly about the difference between those two roles, because historically, kind of customer experience rolled up to operations, whereas marketing had always taken the the belief that, like, look, I'll get them into the stores, but then they're yours. Operations, that was marketing's job. But now you're wearing both hats. Where do those kind of end and begin, and where do they overlap?
So I'm old now, so I've been around a long time. And I think that marketing, while that may be, typical, the role of experience officer has not been around that long. Certainly, I would say 5 years is probably, I mean, maybe it goes a little bit, but really where you're hearing it, there might've been one or two, but where you're hearing it to be a much more common position. And, and from I've lived through evolutions. I was there marketing, in the mid 90s when the internet was born. And so I understand like all those, and for me, marketing, kind of move from analog to digital to social, right? Which is part of digital. And then, now for me, it felt to have this experience element, because what I learned in the past couple of companies, the private equity one was a great example, is that we focused wholly on the customer experience. And by building this technology background, this infrastructure, it was in the automotive collision world, so it's super exciting, right? But it was, if you think about it, when people get in a car accident and they have to bring their car in to get it repaired and I'm not talking about Pep Boys, I'm talking about a body shop. Everything is manual. You have to call the insurance carrier. You have to call the body shop. You have to bring your car over. You have to call and hope that somebody gives you an update on what's happening to your second most, probably important, expensive purchase. It's crazy. And so by mapping the customer experience, looking at where customers were falling out, where we weren't converting them into a repair order in that case, you could see where the biggest pain points were. And so we built a digital infrastructure that allowed us to provide a different way for that customer to interact with us, which was very digitally oriented. And our conversion rates went through the roof. It was a big part of why we turned the company around so quickly. While that is that example there, it's true here too. When you look at the customer, when we map the customer journey, you look at it end to end. Yes, it's operational, Rob, to your point. Certainly there's places that it falls out, but it's not just operational. It's also e-com, it's digital. It's they're having to come back multiple times. It's how we're merchandising. It's how we're marketing it. What are we sharing? It is really, the CX is really holistic.
Sure.
And at Party City, the way that we're looking at CX is not just operational, it is strategic. So our CX function within my world is very much strategic, and we inform everything. So it's an informed input that we work with our head of ops, with our merchandising team, with our wholesale team. We're doing party planning, and we're now we're doing B2B sales. That's a crossover between wholesale and actually party planning on the retail side to deliver parties on a larger scale to businesses. So this is the opportunity with with IT. Oh my God. Like CX with IT was like the major unlock for us. And again, we're still evolving. So, you'll come and be like, wait, your website's really clunky. What are you talking about? Yes, we know, like this is not fast, but the important part is that, it's like, when people, it's that whole saying, like when you're if 5 people tell you you're drunk, just lay down. Well, we just needed to lay down and just redo the whole thing. And that's what we're doing. We're redoing the whole thing to just be experience focused. And that's a ripping off a Band-Aid experience, which is disruptive to a culture. But again, that CX thing is what's driving that across the whole company. And the marketing component, kind of going back to the question, is just one element that feeds into that. And so the two certainly work together, but not exclusively. The CX actually works across the board, by the way, as does marketing. You know, our sales planning is completely marketing locked in with our wholesale and with our, with our merchant team. So that's how we kind of look at things. And the marketing, when it came to me, the biggest component was beyond the things that, with marketing, the media, the marketing, the advertising, that kind of thing, was the e-com. So e-com had been a separate entity, and we pulled it in, and my partner in crime, who runs the merchandising and the commercial side of the business, took on the merchants that were web specific, and I took on the operation of the site itself. And so the CX component informed that. And then we had to work on of course, the actual experience and trying to work on coding. And we've got a big project underway to help to improve that.
But then when COVID did hit, it sounds like you had made some critical adjustments to the product. So you had the right product to market and to sell. How did marketing respond? And given that you've got 700 some locations across almost all 50 states, was that response localized in any way, given all the different restrictions at the state and county level? Were you communicating, were the stores communicating locally about what they had available and whether or not they were even open?
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. We knew we were following. We have a great real estate and operations team that we were following the legislation down to the municipality. And, that included everything, not just being open, but what are the restrictions? What are the requirements from a safety perspective? And what we just did is we did I'd say the lowest common denominator, but we chose the highest common denominator maybe, which is those municipalities that had the strictest rules in place about shopping. We just adopted that across the platform, because we knew then we would be overachieving in some and achieving what we needed in others. And so that's kind of how we did this, to try to instead of having to just, you can spend a lot of time, one-offing 739 stores. So we just went aggressive into the safest possible. History. I know it sounds like crazy. What are you talking about? But it was a very traditional company. So we put that together, and the Joy Squad that we created were these influencers who were also event planners. So they weren't just a typical influencer, they were a special kind of influencer group. And what they did during the pandemic is that they were finding those large pain points about these events. So I was one of those sad moms with a senior in high school who graduated in 2020, and so you didn't get the full experience. But I've got great pictures I could share of, my Jeep that we took the doors off and I put the 2020 balloons, and I had the big personalized signs and banners and the lawn signs and like everything, we went all out. And, what we know here is that we created, and so by the way, at Party City, we created car kits specifically for parades for graduation. We created personalized kits knowing that you would be doing things in your home on a smaller scale than maybe the traditional big party with like the entire senior class in it. And we created those specialized kits, again, to make it easy to click and have it all together. And the car kits were new for graduation. We've done car kits for other things before, for car parades, but we had never done them for graduation. Well, now we do. And then what's interesting about it is that that'll be here this calendar year too, because God for willing, they'll have a normal graduation. But there's some great things that came out of COVID, such as these parades. People love them. And so it's additive instead of alternative to the experiences.
That's interesting.
We did it for birthdays, same thing. So we did the drive-by birthday was big. So we created these kits so that they could they could basically, if you were hosting the party, you could have it shipped home. You could fill out your favor bags. You could drop it in the driveway of each of your guests. And then you could, we had a whole itinerary of how to do a virtual party and games for free that you could play and download. So again, it was about helping them to understand how to create the party. We did the same thing with summer camps. When summer camps were canceled, oh my God, parents were freaked out because the kids don't have school, they have nothing to do, and they can't go to camp. What do you do? So we created these itineraries for them and the whole list of what to buy. And then when it got there, what to do, and so that you didn't have to think about it and spend a ton of time. So all those kinds of things were part of our Joy Squad evolution of how we just pivoted to be able to meet the needs of our customer during this crazy, crazy time.
Well, we're bumping up against our time. I want to make sure we just get at least to one question. What was the e-commerce lift that you saw through COVID?
So as we reported we just reported, and there's just been a pre-report actually came out yesterday, I think, for our final year. But when we went through, we reported in November, which took us through October, our big period. The growth in digital sales, digitally driven sales, which included our curbside and same day delivery, was 31%. So it was a big lift for us, certainly, and one that we are experiencing certainly a continued lift, and that's a continued driver for us. There's a lot of pent up demand, and we are our own worst enemy, holding it back by not making it easy. So our quest this year is just making the experience easy, certainly digitally easy. We've got a big focus this year on focusing on that digital experience.
Well, I mean, your performance through COVID for a company that, relies on social gathering is frankly astounding. Really, I never would have guessed. And I think it's a testament to kind of the team that you guys have put together, the repackaging of the product, and just being able to pivot and be flexible, which is, what all successful brands have done through this challenge.
Yeah, thank you. We're very proud of it, but at the same time, it's disappointing, frankly. I mean, I'm never satisfied. It's just because there's so much demand here, and there's just nothing but upside. If we just make it easy, there's just no telling what's possible. This holistic experience. So I'm really excited about the future of this company.
We look forward to following it. Thanks so much for joining us here, Julie.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Rob. We hope to have you back again soon.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, have a great rest